a just and lasting peace. That's what Keir Starmer always says that he's trying to get for the Ukraine side. But is his definition, is his dream actually, or maybe it's a nightmare, is it really a just and lasting defeat for Ukraine? Because I think the evidence is starting to really show that the more the West gets behind Ukraine, the more they fill up Zelensky's mind with all these things they're going to do to support him, the more they lay the foundation for the defeat and the destruction of Ukraine. Now, if you think that's an exaggeration, let's kind of take a look at the evidence and see where it goes. And to help us make some sense out of this and to be able to call some balls and strikes, we have Andrei Martyanov back with us, who is a veteran author and Russian military expert and has the YouTube channel Smoothie X12. Andrei, as always, welcome back to the show.
My pleasure.
Well, listen, I mean, that juxtaposition there at the beginning about what this is and isn't, whether it's leading to peace or actually with smiles and backslaps and lots of money greasing the path to defeat for the Ukraine side. How do you see this thing playing out?
Well, I mean, it's not about Ukraine anymore. It's about European NATO, or whatever, European Union and European NATO. And obviously, as our good friend Larry Johnson also stated, that Trump has filed divorce with from NATO. It's over for Europeans. I've been saying this nonstop for a number of years, actually. And it's just for Starmer, for Macrons, for Merz's, or all kinds of other people from the European Union. It's the only way to survive. In London, in particular, bet the house on all this nonsense, and considering the extremely low level in terms of the strategic forecasting and military competence, that's who they are. I mean, this is not about Zelensky. This is about saving any kind of the remnants of Ukraine as the future bulwark, and something that they can show their constituents, let's put it this way, that you see, we kind of defeated Russians, I mean, it's difficult to really comment on the basically, psychiatric ward or, asylum, because that's what it is. I mean, it's like me trying to not being a psychiatrist, trying to, comment on people who are utterly in the fear, in panic, and behave irrationally.
Well, speaking of behaving rational or otherwise, let's start off with what President Trump said last night here in the United States. And he was asked, how does Zelensky feel about his plan? And apparently, according to Trump, he hadn't even read it.
So we've been speaking to President Putin, and we've been speaking to Ukrainian leaders, including Zelensky, President Zelensky. And I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed that President Zelensky hasn't yet read the proposal. That was as of a few hours ago. His people love it, but he hasn't. Russia's fine with it. Russia, I guess, would rather have the whole country when you think of it. But Russia is, I believe, fine with it, but I'm not sure that Zelensky is fine with it. His people love it, but he hasn't read it.
I mean, I don't know what conversations happen behind the scenes, but I mean, what do you make, just on the surface of it, of the President of the United States saying that Zelensky's people love it, he thinks it's great, and apparently Russia's okay with it. We'll talk about that separately, but the Zelensky hasn't even read it. What do you make of that?
No, Zelensky obviously, I'm not sure that at this stage Zelensky, who is constantly high on cocaine and whatever else he takes, he's capable of rationally comprehend basically what is there. But the fact that his people love it, I doubt it. Obviously, it's typical Trump hyperbole, let's call it this way. And, exaggeration, on the several order of magnitude. Russians are fine with the discussing those things. It's not a peace plan, as Russian political top already expressed their opinions on this matter, and it's just the points which are good for discussion. And no, Russia doesn't want the whole of Ukraine. Actually, he is obviously exaggerating again, and so. But I mean, it's fine. The more important thing about this so-called peace plan, which is not planned, it's not about really peace per se, but it's actually the it's the new national security strategy, which is more important. And Russia is mentioned there 8 times, but it is a strategic shift, essentially, tectonic shift in how United States expressed, their attitude towards Russia, which I think is remarkable. And at least on the surface of that issue, and the fact that Russians much more positively reacted to the national security strategy of the United States than to this proposal of 28, 42, or whatever, 168 points, is that, finally there is a totally common sense and, pragmatic statement that, hey, we have to have the strategic balance between Russia and normal relations. So that is like, wow, after this so many years, after this basically, demonization of Russia, that suddenly you have this strategic shift, which is really positive. And Russians say, hey, we're good with that. That's good. We like that, And that's what Trump probably meant, because Mr. Peskov yesterday, speaking on behalf of Kremlin, obviously that's the only structure he speaks on behalf of, he stated that, we are very pleased by the fact that how United States changed its position in terms of Russian-American relations, and it is good. It is very positive. As for the rest of it, it's Trump's PR. That's what he does. He embellishes, he exaggerates, he uses hyperboles, but Zelensky and his regime are doomed, and we know that they are doomed. Zelensky is pretty much constantly high on because he knows he's the dead man walking. And so whatever they want to do with Europeans, hey, let them do it. I mean, Europe doesn't have resources, including military industrial resources, to support Ukraine in any way. Russians know that the money, those Russian frozen assets, have been stolen, and the game of cat and mouse begins. And, not cat and mouse. Mouse is cornered. The rat is cornered, and Russians are standing in front of it's just looking at it and getting ready to, sue everybody, and that will destroy EU finally.
This picture that Gary's showing right there, this is just earlier today, so not long ago, all ago, where you had the 3 big powers of Europe, with Germany, UK, and France, of course, sitting right there with Zelensky, trying to give this unified front that, we are a force for peace. We're going to bring things to the head and make things work out. But they're also simultaneously trying to balance relations with the United States and not to alienate him. But in the comments that came by all 3 of these guys afterwards, I'm not sure they're walking that tightrope very well. Let's take a look at all 3 of them. First of all, we're going to look at Emmanuel Macron, who still thinks that the European side has cards to play.
We all support Ukraine, and we all support peace and peace negotiations to have a sustainable, a robust peace. And I think we have a lot of cards in our hands. The financing and the furniture of equipment and training programs to Ukraine, the fact that Ukraine is resisting in this war, and the fact that the Russian economy is starting to suffer, especially after our latest sanctions and the US sanctions. And now I think the main issue is a convergence between our common positions, Europeans and Ukrainians, and the US to finalize these peace negotiations.
2 things I really want to zero in on there is first of all, he said that because of all of the actions that the Europeans and the Western Union have been taking with sanctions, that the Russian economy is now starting to teeter. So things are moving in our direction. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, he's full of what. None of them understand really. Truth is, he might as well believe it. I mean, because they are not very bright people there in Europe. And as I already stated, the only thing they are basically trying to control right now, they are in panic, okay? And so whatever he says is absolutely useless. Europe is not a factor in all that. They are poor babies. They are crying that they have been ignored by both the United States and Russia. Fact is, Ukraine is also being ignored, because it is not between then, Europe was used as a bunch of morons that they are. But in the end, these are two big dogs who are settling things between themselves. Simple as that. And it's just the way the life is. It doesn't matter. If I'm 5-year-old kid, I cannot participate in the adults, roughly speaking, conversation. I mean, unless, of course, I'm putting on the chair or somewhere and try to declare, read some kind of the child's poetry or something like that for the, amusement of the adults in the room. Other than that, I mean, what can they do? France is not a factor, as I already stated many times. I just read the article yesterday, Telegraph. Actually, United Kingdom cannot even maintain and sustain even a single strategic missile submarine, which goes to sea, and they cannot maintain the fleet. And even considering the fact that their Vanguard class usually has, instead of 16, has about 4 or 2 tridents loaded there. That tells you everything. They are pathetic. They are militarily insignificant, apart from the fact. So, and what can they do? You have now the situation I saw yesterday, what is happening in banlieues in Paris. They just shoot cops on spot and nothing French can do about it. So it's a country which is basically tearing itself apart, and that's what is happening. What can I say? I mean, yeah, they can say whatever they want. I mean, I can sit here, for an hour and declare myself a Superman. It doesn't make me Superman, but that's the problem. In PR world, especially in the Western world, where everything revolves around PR, and unlike it is United States, Europeans do not have that many alternative media, and they are really brainwashed. I mean, some of them are waking up, some of them go to the American sources, for example, like our show today, but majority believe all their press, and their media are, well, basically nothing more than sheer propaganda machine, which, detaches them from the reality. And reality for Europe is bad. It's over for Europe. It's all for European Union. They will be poor. They are already becoming poor. And for Macron and all these guys, as I already stated, they bet the house on this whole idea, because they believe this delirium from Biden administration that, they can attack Russia, Putin's regime will collapse, Russians will go into those, manifestations, demonstrations, remove those, people from Kremlin, and Russia will be broken up, or, basically put under the control of the West. And here we are. We have all those resources, more than 30% of the world's resources, and everybody is fine, including the banksters and globalists from Davos. Doesn't work like this. They are not well-educated people, and they have degrees, make no mistake, but they are not well-educated people. They do not understand warfare at all. And as a result, we have this. And so now they have been defeated utterly. And again, as Mr. Ushakov stated, Mr. Ushakov, the personal aide of Vladimir Putin, it is the front line which speaks. Not all those statements, everything is done on the front line. For those people who do not understand, war decides everything. I'm sorry to say it, but that's how the human civilization existed for the last how many thousand years.
Yeah, we're gonna take a look at the military aspect of this in a minute, but a couple more from the diplomatic and political. And actually, this is kind of a convergence of both. We had on our show earlier today a reporter from the Atlantic who just did an extensive in-depth story on the rebuilding of the German military. One of the things that he said, which really kind of stood out to me, is that Friedrich Merz really thinks that he is going to, not really thinks, he is planning to rebuild the German military, make it the most powerful military force on the continent, more than any of the others. But then at the same time, the reporter said that his on-the-ground research showed that there's a lot of dispute within the German population, especially in the eastern part, that does not want to have an antagonistic relationship with Russia. So I'm not sure how they're going to build that up. But with that as a foundation, here is what Merz said today.
So we are trying to continue our support for Ukraine, as you know. On the other hand, we are seeing these talks and negotiations in Moscow and the US. And we are still and remain strongly behind Ukraine and giving support to your country, because we all know that this the destiny of this country is the destiny of Europe. I'm skeptical about some of the details which we are seeing in the documents coming from the U.S. side, but we have to talk about that.
I just like the way he says, I'm a little skeptical about some of the stuff coming out of the Trump plan. And I think that you and I talked the last time you were on about how a bunch of those 28 points were just non-negotiable for Russia. They wouldn't even contemplate it. And yet the view from the European leaders is that already goes too far toward the Russian side. They want to get it moving the other for a just and lasting peace. These things just can't go together.
No, they can't. And again, as you correctly stated, even Atlantic, listen, there are no people who understand what is the process of the creating of the modern armed forces among any journalists anywhere in the world. They have no clue. They don't have the toolkit to grasp, really. And the question is not that, Germany has no voice. They have about 30 Eurofighters which are ready to fly. In case of combat, the rest of it is used as basically cannibalized for the spare parts. They do not have their what is called TOE, table of organization of equipment, which is beyond the 1990s. So they can dream of building whatever they want and pretend that they really matter. But yeah, we saw today the demonstrations also all over Germany of the young people who do not want to be recruited. The problem is, and they want to return to conscription. The problem is Germany is not the economic power people think it is. It was always highly export-dependent economy, and essentially, basically, they have the chemical industry dead. It was, gleefully annihilated by all those Grüne and all kind of people like that. They don't have really viable nuclear power energy. Industry. They have Rheinmetall, which can produce 2.5 new Leopards a year, and maybe 3 barrels of the tanks, and that's about it, And my forensic mental experiment is always like that, and I always offer people to try to conduct this basically experiment is try to make Germany make even the most basic nuclear power submarine one, and see how its economic bottom will fall off. So many people do not understand what their superpower is. And they can dream about building whatever they want. They do not have enough rifles to even actually arm their army. And technologically, they are 2 generations behind, for example, what Russia feels. So if they think that they can build something, they can, of course, dream, but Germany is done. It's over. And the fact that, people say that alternative for Germany, AfD, can win, which it probably can win, but again, it's mostly, grounded in the Eastern Germany, former GDR, which the only part of Germany which retained the, German culture and Germanness, if you wish. And so, what can I say? They shake hair. I need to comment on them basically living in the alternative reality. And
alternative reality is a good place. Good description. And unfortunately, that's probably even more descriptive of the British host of this meeting.
Oh, good Lord.
The principles remain the principles that we've been based on for a very, very long time, which is that we stand with Ukraine, and if there's to be a ceasefire, it needs to be a just and lasting ceasefire. And that's why it's so important that we repeatedly set out the principle that matters about Ukraine are for Ukraine. And we stand here to support you in the conflict and support you in the negotiations and make sure that this is a just and lasting settlement if we can get that far.
We stand with you. We support you. We want a just and lasting peace. He's literally saying all of his bumper stickers. He's literally not saying anything at all. I don't know what they think that this unified group of these 4 powerful figures is actually doing towards bringing this war to an end?
No, it's not about war to the end. I think they are informed that this is over. They are fighting for their survival as the political force. But the latest news I heard from United Kingdom is that Starmer has like, what, 10% approval rating or something like that. The guy, they already gathered more than 1 million signatures to remove this guy. And again, if you look attentively at the trend, we had Bojo, we had Liz Truss, who existed as the prime minister for like, what, 3 months. Sunak, now this clown. So they cannot produce real people there, real statesmen, because all of this system is completely broken. They produce all kinds of the, political operatives who will write any idea in their opinion as long as it keeps them in power. They thought that their, hatred of Russia is a good, vehicle for them to gain political power and control their otherwise getting poorer and poorer British population. And now we have million signatures, which were required to start removing Starmer. So many of them probably, after they are thrown out of the office, will be charged in absentia for war crimes, which many of them are. And so, what can I say? Again, shaking of the air. I just want to return back to this. They cannot sustain even a single strategic missile submarine on the patrol.
Well, now I want to get your view on something else. So those comments all just happened just hours ago, and maybe not even that long ago. Just happened here. There was another statement that was pretty important that happened also today, and this is kind of box end these comments. So I started off with President Trump talking about how Zelensky hadn't even read the article, so it's kind of casting a lot of shade on Zelensky. These guys tried to put some light back onto it. Well, then from Doha, Don Jr. was asked a pretty pointed question, which I think is very telling.
And obviously, Ukraine has a massive corruption issue, and as you say,
it was a far more corrupt country than Russia, as delegated by the United States government prior to this war. But then, because of the war, and because he's one of the great marketers of all time, Zelensky became a borderline deity, especially to the left, where he could do no wrong. He was beyond reproach. Years of corruption, years of graft and theft on a world stage that everyone in this room knew was happening, was totally absolved. And it's ridiculous. We're not dealing in reality.
But is your hunch that President Trump is going to walk away?
I think he may. What's good about my father and what's unique about my father is you don't know what he's going to do. The fact that he's not predictable, he's not following the playbook of every clown who's, again, been a bureaucrat for decades, you don't know.
And look, the fact that you are going out of your way to say that they're corrupt and that my father may walk away on this day, what does that tell you?
Well, I mean, it's always a lot of, tinsel around all that. But reality is there is a logical circumstances. And again, going to the square one, it doesn't matter what those people, including Don Jr. or including even Trump himself, say. It's all in the end decided on the front lines. It's all decided on the operational strategic level. Simple as that. And again, listen, I've been on it for the last 2 years. In 2023, it became clear Russia won the war already then. It just was there how long the combined West was willing to basically continue with the agony. They decided to go, full in, all in into this, agonizing thing. And now when they basically bankrupt and even the United States is demilitarized. And so that's the only thing people have to do, to change their position. And Trump, again, he had the whole year, and he never did this move, which he was supposed to do, as he's doing now. Because he believed that they still can defeat Russia, because that's how he was informed. All those Kellogg's, all those Petreuses, all those losers constantly, basically talking to him into his ear that, no, we can defeat those Ruskies, while in reality, the guys are sore losers. They thought that they can actually go toe-to-toe, not even close. And as the result, then when there's nothing more to lose and he sees the result, but now it is his war. And he was given the last off ramp with all that by Russians. Because in the end, Russians don't care. They can continue doing what they're doing for as long as it takes. And that is another thing. He continues to throw in this idiotic idea that Russia somehow want all Ukraine. No, they don't. Majority of Russian population do not want to do anything with the what is became of Ukraine. Maybe Russians will go and get the left bank, basically of Dnieper, maybe, but even that is not necessarily, preordained. But yeah, last time I looked at the map, I mean, around 40 kilometers inside Kharkov, Zaporozhye is being moved to the west, and things of this nature. So it's happening.
And I want to kind of shift a little bit to the military stuff, because you talked about, and certainly we are in a complete agreement, that everything matters on the ground. You can say anything that you want politically in any direction. That means Moscow, Paris, France, Washington, etc. But it all comes down to what actually happens on the battlefield. And there was a very illustrative interview a couple of days ago. I'm going to show you some comments here from a Russian and a Ukrainian general. And I think inadvertently they're going to tell the same story. So first of all, here's General Apti Aludinov. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly.
Aludinov. Yeah, Aludinov.
Thank you for Aludinov, by Dmitry Simes Jr. on 28th November. And he was asked about this accusation that Russia is moving really slow.
This is a proxy war through Ukraine where NATO is fighting us, so it doesn't make sense for us to make sharp thrusts and movements and take heavy losses. It's much more advantageous to grind down the enemy's resources, making them tremble and start to fall apart, which is exactly what's happening now.
So the accusation is that Russia, and I think we've talked about this before. Macron has several times said, Russia's only taken 1% in the last 2 years of the territory, so it ain't that big a deal. But the General Apti is saying basically, well, look, we're not going to put our troops at risk. I wonder if you can put that in context, what he said there, and what is the focus on the Russian side? Is it really not to throw all the Russian troops away in meat wave attacks, they said, and what is the net result of that?
Yeah, it's for people who say otherwise. Aptil Odinov absolutely correctly summarized it. This is what everybody who has any brains in military, they have been repeating this from the start of the special military operation. Russia is not fighting Ukraine. Ukraine as the functional state doesn't exist anymore. It's a virtual state, utterly corrupt, utterly criminalized, but it's against NATO and the political strategic objective, which grand strategic objective and military strategic objective is to demilitarize NATO and see as the result dissolution of the NATO itself on the continent and of European Union, although it's kind of secondary. So, I mean, Aludinov absolutely correct here, and that's the other thing. Today, there is a 193rd anniversary, 193 years. Russian Academy of the General Staff, they celebrate this. Some people who state those things about that, not fast enough, and they should, they will not obviously pass the entrance exams, we know that. But for example, the old professor and this PhD, set up from the, General Staff Command College in the Leavenworth, Kansas, should try to attend it at least to get some, lessons on the strategy and how it works. And yes, the preservation of your own personnel is one of the critical points because obviously when we look attentively, especially corroborated data, their kill ratio is staggering. In some sectors, it's up to 1 to 30 between Russians and Ukrainians. And so that's, by the way, which actually is the main, so to speak, needle up the butt of those politicians who know what is happening. They finally recognize that the war is lost. And as the result, we have the situation. They wanted to fight to the last Ukrainian, and that's probably what Russia will accommodate them with, and this is the warfare of the 21st century. And many of those people, especially in European commands, they do not even have a clue, actually, how it is being prosecuted and how it is being fought, because they don't read Military Thought magazine, which as of a flurry of the latest issues dedicated to the development of the issues of the strategy, and including operational matters, which, for example, October issue of the Military Thought, Военная мысль, speaks about the new concept of the combined arms operations, of which they say that in the end, it is not just, can Russians dissect this defense? Of course they can. But that means what? Higher casualties. What do? They do squeezing out. That's how it's called, выдавливание. And this is, for example, what is happening right now in Gulay-Pole as we speak. And so in the end, what is the main object of war? Is to kill your enemy, period. Disable it, make him, basically submit to yourself. And this is exactly what is happening.
Well, in fact, that very issue is one of the other things that the Russian general had to discuss and talking about, and he's talking about here in this soundbite about the consequence on the Ukrainian armed forces to this degradation now every month.
It's no secret. According to analysts, not ours, Ukraine loses 40,000 people on the front every month. 40,000. And they can only mobilize 25,000 a month. So every month, Ukraine's manpower shrinks by at least 15,000, even with year-round mobilization.
So that's obviously a death spiral. You simply can't maintain that, right? So now people may think, well, that's the Russian guy saying stuff, and that's obviously he's exaggerating on the Ukraine side. But in an interview this last Friday with Ukrainian General Syrsky, he was asked the other side of that same question about the lack of manpower and how do you continue to fight when the numbers are low. Watch his answer.
We do not launch massive offensives or mass assaults. We do not tie operations to specific dates, places, or symbolic days. We defend our municipalities only as long as it makes sense. We do not defend ruins that have no strategic value.
Okay, so I want to ask two separate questions. I'm going to get to his issues about what they don't defend secondly, but let's look at that first thing. If you don't have enough manpower, can you fight and even hold out in a war, much less win, if you don't have enough men to actually conduct large-scale operations or grinding operations of the type that General Ludinov talked about? How can he continue to fight a war with the limitations he just described of his own words?
He can't. No, they will continue. Throwing this cannon fodder to be annihilated. Much of it now, for example, the defense, as you look at Mirnograd, it's not really defense. You don't see even those teeny-weeny blue arrows there, which would otherwise indicate any kind of the counter-attack. Forget about offensive. Offensive operations is the serious thing. But then again, for people to have a grasp of what it is, it has to be actually the explanation of what operations are and why, for example, battalion cannot conduct operations. Only division and up can do that. But truth is, much of those people now, they sit in those cellars and basements, what have you, until they're blown up to smithereens. And then those who have enough common sense try to escape and surrender. Those who don't, they're getting killed. And no matter what they do, it doesn't matter. It's all just basically mopping up right now. And this doesn't mean that Russians do not sustain casualties. Russians do. But it's, as I already stated, in some sectors it's 1 to 30. It's a slaughter. And yeah, Mr. Syrsky, he cannot come up and say that, he, together with Mr. Zaluzhny, together with all this military political top of Ukraine, will be charged either in person or in absentia with the war crimes. It's already known, that's news today, by the Russian tribunal. Actually, the materials have been transferred from Moscow to Donetsk, where the part of the tribunal will be held. And yeah, Mr. Syrsky is a war criminal. And instead of having enough honor to turn around, he decided that he can fight war. He can't. And again, do not forget, He was, since 2014, he was the guy. He was the point man who was in charge of the basically bringing the Ukrainian armed forces to the NATO standards. How those standards worked out for him, let him ask. Not very well. And when you look attentively at how much was supplied to Ukraine, that's just amazing. That's why NATO is demilitarized. They have nothing to share with. That's it. Only frontline units like First Armored, in the United States, unless it wants to give up its table of equipment, essentially, basically to Ukraine, it will basically turning itself as nothing more than the, police force. That's it. There's nothing more to give. And that was the whole, basically, objective of this whole special military operation.
And I wonder if you could just comment just briefly on the latter part of his statement in that last soundbite, where he said, look, we're going to preserve our manpower. We're not just going to throw it away for nothing. So we're not going to defend rubble cities and things that don't have any tactical value. We're not going to do that. And of course, as the words were still coming out of his mouth, I was thinking, Mariupol, Lysychansk, Severodonetsk, Avdiivka, Bakhmut, obviously Pokrovsk, and then now Mirnograd, you just mentioned.
And Kupiansk, yeah.
So, well, I had Kupiansk to that as well. Maybe Vovchansk even potentially. But all these other ones, they routinely stay long beyond what they need to. I add Kursk into that, add Krinky into that list as well. It's like that's almost all they do is stay beyond what makes military sense to do so. What would have made military sense in some of these cities where they could have provided or protected their manpower, not thrown it away?
Run. In these particular circumstances today, it's running to the right bank of Dnieper, try to create some kind of the defensive position, shorten the front as much as possible. But they will not. The reason they will not, because Russian general staff knows why they are not going to be doing this. This is precisely what defines the, actually now increasing speed of the advance, because it is all tied into, as we spoke in the beginning, to all those political positions, especially of the European leaders, who need to Ukrainian men die as much as possible because they need to actually stay in political power there. And as the result, it is all about PR now, and it is also about the fighting doctrine, which is from 1990s, and this is 2025. And so Syrskyi can sit there and say whatever he wants. He missed the opportunity to turn around, as some officers in armed forces of Ukraine did. Some of them just simply resigned. Others actually went on the Russian side. But guess what? It's too late now, and he is going to be charged as a war criminal, because he is, together with the regime in Kyiv and those people from Western capitals who supported it, and as a result, we know that it's around 2 million KIAs and EMAs in Ukrainian armed forces, and we can pretty confidently state that it is another probably 2 million at least wounded, some of them maimed for the rest of their life. And so if they think that they can continue like that, Russians will accommodate, and Russia has no shortage of not only power, it's the fact of the combat effectiveness and correlations of forces and means. Russia has overwhelming firepower advantage. It's not even fair. So, and that's what is happening. And
right. Well, listen, I want to kind of shift it, because that paints a pretty consistent picture where this is where this is heading. And the only question is, how long is it going to take to get there? Yeah. And we can debate that. I want to shift the gears a little bit, and instead of looking at the Ukraine side or even Europe, is also look at the American side. So a lot of the focus has been on this 28-point peace plan and whether Trump's going to walk away from it, et cetera. But while we are really, I guess, I don't want to say casting aspersions, but bringing light to what the Ukraine side is doing, what the European side is doing, how they're not, like you really just said, you're not fighting in the 2025. You're still fighting in the 1990s doctrine, et cetera. I fear that the U.S. is going along the same path. I want to look just real briefly, not a whole lot, but I want to look a little bit at the national security strategy. And I want to look at some other documents that have recently come out, really at the operational level, which I think paint an even more disturbing picture. Now, first of all, with this national security strategy that came out, my personal opinion, and I'd like to hear your view, is that this was really kind of non-noteworthy because it doesn't mean anything. I don't think Trump considers himself bound by anything. And it's ironic because just like with Trump's peace plan, you see that, first of all, one headline there is that Trump's national security strategy sparks European backlash over far right. But then at the other side, Russia praises some of the strategy. So it depends on where you sit. But, nobody's completely happy with this. What do you make, first of all, of the strategy of the United States as it's been produced?
It is definitely it is definitely Trump's signature there. Okay, it has the seal of the White House, the President of the United States, and so in this sense, he acquiesces to basically major points which are stated there. For Russians, it was clear which was the most overriding objective, especially when the Biden administration was committing the absolutely ridiculous things, with Ukraine, is that it's all about preventing the nuclear war. It's all preventing the World War III, and it's a very welcoming change in the tone. Europe doesn't matter. That's what many people do not understand. They do not matter. They are not the subject of the international relations. NATO is a euphemism for the United States. Europeans do not have the economically, militarily, technologically any say in this. And so the only thing they can do is to play all those, internal Western and American political games of the, of far right or whatever the hell they talk about, they don't really know what far right is, but the point is that we have the situation where there is an internal complete discontent, if you wish. And so it's just the way Europe is dying, and it's gonna die. And it's already dead. It's just a matter of how long they want to prolong their agony. If the European people finally find themselves, I doubt they will, but you know what? It is one of those cases when I will be happy to admit my mistake, and I will be happy. But a point is, it doesn't matter what they say. The United States rules in Western Europe, period. And in this case, Europeans know who they will become. They will be poor, and they will be supplied with American weapons, whether they want it or not. And they will have to pay for it. The same as United States achieved a dramatic strategic success, granted it's self-defeating, when they removed Russia and Russian energy from Europe. The problem, of course, that the United States will go about supplying Europe with energy the way United States deems it necessary, not Europeans, So, Chihuahua plays with the pit bull, it gets eaten, okay? There are so many memes going around. Again, there are three superpowers in the world. It's United States, Russia, and China. India is kind of climbing there. So that's it. Europe is irrelevant in this case, and that's what many people do not understand. And I constantly try to basically explain to them that in the part which constitutes the composite index of national capability, none of the European countries or even European Union combined, they really actually are anywhere on the horizon, despite the fact that national security strategy, in which we just discussed essentially, writes about that. Oh yeah, Europe has advantages over Russians, but really not really. And so the fate of them, their fate is sealed, unless, as I already stated, European people rise up. But looks like they don't want to. So we'll see. There are some demonstrations in Germany, but I always give this story. One of the Russian military, members of European Parliament, a few years back, and he was talking to people who were behind the closed doors, and he was talking with a number of the MPs from European Parliament, from France, Germany, and he said, guys, you have the instability coming, and people might revolt and things like that. And his response to him from a number of those people was very simple: said, "Oh, we have enough dogs and police to put it down." So there you go. So Europeans have to make their choice. If they don't want to make their choice, the history itself and realities, on the ground, so to speak, will. And it's not going to be nice one way or another. But at least, as they say, it's better die standing, than live on the knees. So it's a complex issue there. But United States will tell Europeans what to do. And
let's take a look at that. So let me ask you a separate, little more challenging question. First of all, I want to show you mentioned this a second ago, but here is what Dmitry Peskov had to say about the national security strategy.
Нынешняя администрация коренным образом отличается от предыдущих. И, конечно, сейчас президент Трамп силен с точки зрения внутриполитических позиций, и это дает ему возможность корректировать в соответствии со своим видением концепцию. Те корректировки, которые мы видим, я бы сказал, они соответствуют во многом и нашему видению.
Там ведь даже признание, что НАТО нужно перестать расширяться, даже об этом речь.
Безусловно, там и формулировки против конфронтации и в сторону диалога. Выстраивание добрых отношений. Это то, о чем говорит Путин. И это, конечно, отрадно, с одной стороны. Но, с другой стороны, мы знаем, что бывает, когда очень красиво, концептуально все написано. Поэтому, конечно, нужно очень внимательно следить за тем, какую реализацию найдет эта концепция.
So, and it's self-evident. I mean, it would be almost illogical for him to say anything else because of some of the language that's in here for the first time, and especially in contrast to what the Biden administration had naturally. But there's also the issue about what Trump can do. Now, my belief is, and that's why I really want to hear what you think from the Russian side of this, is that especially, let's just say, what happened in Anchorage, Alaska. It seemed that the two heads of state met, talked face to face, and they both left with a same understanding of how things were. But then when Trump left, all of a sudden he's talking like out this direction, and Putin was understanding from this direction, and the Russians are like, wait, what meeting were you in? Because it's like Trump can't seem to hold the focus for a long time. So he's not really somebody that you can pin your future to, etc.
No.
So I don't think that they're going to, but what it sounds to me like is, and this is what I think, that there's run into some friction with Europeans, because the Europeans are saying, and this was conveyed to me by the Atlantic reporter this morning who just got back from Europe, is that they're genuinely puzzled as to why Trump doesn't put more pressure on Russia to compel them to do a deal that he wants. And when I ask him, compel them with what? What leverage does he have? And he didn't really have an answer, speaking on behalf of the Europeans, but they still stay with that idea. So it seems to me that whether this national security strategy or anything else, that the Russians will play nice with Trump, because at least he communicates with them, but they won't actually expect the United States to do anything that Russia wants. Is that close?
Yeah, I mean, you ask what any normal military professional asks the critical question. To compel with what? That's the point. What, they want to send, carrier battle group? Impress me, So it's, that's the whole point. And what many people do not understand, and especially journalists, they do not have toolkit, intellectual and life experience and educational.
Although he's just telling me what the heads of state are saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they are.
Worrisome part.
That's what we have. They are heads of state, but they're not statesmen. They are politicians. They do not have any serious education. They do not have any serious life experiences. These are, silver spoon wussies. Look at them, who are sentimental, who are, oh my God. Do you know that Merz, this, tough German, just put, helmet on him, get him into the, Tiger tank, and he will show those, the Panzer division. No, they are all wussies. They're all kids. The guy filed more than 4,000 lawsuits. You know why? Because somebody called him in German press something really nasty, like he's fool or moron or something like that.
Yeah.
That tells you everything. They are petty little children, with a teenager, teenage type of the, so to speak, maturity level. That's the whole thing. And that is why I constantly say that, for example, French elected one cretin, which was Hollande, then they twice elected with a landslide Mr. Macron. Who is guilty then? Who bears the responsibility for their country? You know what? I'm not taking those suggestions, that, voting doesn't change anything. Well, it does. If you look attentively, when we were electing Trump, I voted for him 3 times. As much as he is narcissist and full of hot air, you know what? In 2024, with the Biden administration and this bunch of criminals there, such as Sullivan or Blinken or all those people, we were on the verge of the starting of the nuclear war when the United States will go, because they were just absolutely corrupted with neocons and cretins who won't understand the first thing about war. Hey, at least so far with Trump, we do have the change of the MO. At least Russia and the United States are talking now. That's the change. That means it looks like neither Russia nor United States wants to fight each other, especially God forbid nuclear exchange. That's already net positive. Granted that Trump is full of hot air, he is basically narcissist, but at least in this particular instance, hey, that's positive. We can say that. I remember Scott Ritter when he's like, oh my God, well, at least we avoided nuclear war. That's good. That's positive. You see, and this is because we voted, although we all knew. Tucker Carlson came out and he said, we all know who this man is. We know he's a, chatterbox. We know he's a narcissist, but he's still better than those bunch of criminals from Democratic Party, and that's exactly what happened.
Now, before I get too cocky on pointing fingers and mocking some of the Europeans, especially in the military realm, there was a couple of headlines that were out today, which keeps me a little bit more humble and concerned on our side. Now, you just pointed out, at least the United States has avoided getting into any kind of a, Gary, not that one. We're going to go that one second. We haven't gotten any kind of a conflict with Russia, and it looks like we're going to try to avoid it. But in the event that something bad were to happen, the folks that are running our show on the operational level in the military, I don't think that they're really paying a lot of attention to what's actually going on the ground. And then since you live there, paying attention on the ground. This headline was out today, 300,000 drones. What excess drone buildup means and what we still need to know. According to this article, based on current intel planning and industry documentation, the early production targets are aggressive. Approximately 30,000 drones delivered by mid-July 2026, followed by a ramp up to well over 200,000 units by 2027. With a long-term goal of roughly 300,000 platforms across the services. The drones are intended to be inexpensive and to be manufactured expendable in combat with an initial unit cost of around $5,000 per, and then maybe dropping later. Those numbers really stood out to me because now, Gary, if you can put that other headline up there, when you look at what the Russians and Ukrainians are doing right now, Russia was producing 2 million FPV drones in 2025. Ukraine is producing about 100,000 a month. And the United States is talking 30,000 in a year from now. What does that tell you about where the focus is in the understanding of how modern combat is being fought?
Well, first, the people have to understand, and again, this goes back to operations. And the question is that, first, they don't build 100,000, they build some. Effectiveness of the Ukrainian drones by Russian Defense Ministry, actually, between 2 and 4%. It is extremely low effectiveness. Russian drones have effectiveness of up to 25 and even more, 25%. So the number of drones in itself does not reflect anything apart from the fact that, again, Ukraine doesn't produce 100,000 drones. It's all kind of they pull these things out.
But fair enough. Let's just go with the Russian numbers. Let's just say that it is, what the Russians are saying, and that they have that percentage. That means 75%, and that's the best case, is not going to go in. But if you're going in the numbers do matter if you only have 25% of 30,000 instead of 300,000, which the other side can have.
Well, correct. But the point is, what is also has to be understood, and again, make no mistake, drones, UAVs, we have all those videos, which create the impression that drones decide everything. No, I have news for people. Still, 80% of the the casualties are inflicted by good old artillery, field artillery, be them self-propelled or towed artillery, by the tanks being used as the self-propelled artillery, by the long-range fires such as the operational tactical weapons such as Iskanders and things of this nature. MLRS, this rocket artillery is the king. But you cannot explain to those people, dude, study the freaking, data, which even Russians are ready to share. But you cannot explain it to them. They see all those videos, and they, oh yeah, we have to do this. Sure, nobody says that drones are not important. They are important. But the main issue, which Russians came up with this idea, which is essentially derivative of the net-centric operation, which is Rock being the recon fire complex. This is all kinds of things, MLRSs, artillery, drones, and things like that. So majority of the, if you even look at attentively and especially if you talk to people on the front lines, it is artillery. It was always a god of war. And again, what is drone? You can stick maybe 6, grenades, or as they do on one of those things. Yeah, you can do the UAV with the, RPG, what basically charge and blow the, basically something. When you lay the fire on the, 2 square miles thing, especially with the, things of like Saint-Cypriot, nothing lives there. It's not like even you send the 100 drones. You still can survive that, especially if you are in the forest. But when you have those Saint-Cypriot, the vacuum things flying in, you're done. The basically ground turns to the, into the glass. And you cannot explain this to people, but there is every instrument for each of the proper tasks which you have to do. And of course, the main point of the drones is not just killing. It's the recon capability of the drones, which gives you immediate tactical awareness of the immediate tactical, basically depth battlefield. But obviously,
so let me ask you though, if you see now, we've announced that we're hoping by the end of a year from now, at the end of 2027, that we might be up to around 300,000 in a year, and Russia apparently is today at 2 million at the rate of production per year.
Yeah.
In the event then and let's forget about the reasons why they don't matter at this point, but in the event something bad set of circumstances happened and there's a conventional clash between a United States / NATO force and a Russian force, how's that going to play out on the battlefield?
Not very good for United States. And I will quote you, none other people from the parameters of this U.S. Army War College. It was 2023, Lessons from Ukraine. You can look up this article. And these are TRADOC people, Training and Doctrinal Command. They said that, which was on the low end, they said if to imagine that Russian Navy allows the United States prepositional force move along the, the Atlantic shipping lanes of communications, the daily casualty rate for the U.S. Army alone, not NATO, 3,600 a day, per day. So will the United States be capable to deal with this? No. We know that's going to be a revolution here or something like that, So they say that, I can send you this article. It's wonderful.
Yeah, please do.
So, and this is, they say we will reach the number of killed KIAs alone, equaling the number of KIAs in the Vietnam War by the end of the week 4 of this clash.
Wow. And that's 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, when you look at, I know we don't have much time left here, but in the last few minutes, in the time that when Russia realized, oh, snap, in early mid 2022, that now we have to have this, partial mobilization. We have to really ramp up reserve recruitment, et cetera, because they're going to have to sustain a long war. And then it started the mobilization of the industry and all that kind of stuff. And it took, I'd say, a good year and a half, I guess, to get it up to scale.
Yeah.
We're not even starting at that process here. So it seems to me, and this is always a dicey thing, that the United States, from that 2023 report and what we'd already seen, we need to say, if there's even a theoretical chance we could get into a clash with Russia, we should have started like a year ago to get things ramped up. Because if we wait until there's a clash, I don't know how we survive it. Do you?
Yeah, and there's another thing. Yeah, I agree. And it's the other thing. United States lacks completely what is called the troop, not service, but the troops, such as air defense. I mean, there is nothing which even comes close to Russian air defense. And that's the thing. One of the reasons why Russians continue to live like they live, and they continue to, live their normal lives. They go to the dances, they visit theaters, they buy their whatever. Air defense and ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. Many people forget that the second largest constellation from early warning to all kinds of their things in space is Russian. So, and it's growing, actually. Russians don't, they will have the kind of equivalent of the Starlink, but it's communications primarily. So, yeah, and that's the thing. It's not just operational and strategic factor. How you can explain to some guy from the U.S. Army War College that, dude, everything you know about air defense, throw it away. It's nothing. I mean, look at that. And do you understand what it means to main critical point of the American strategy? Land-sea battle, and then of course land battle, which was the concept that we have so many planes. Doesn't matter. You cannot get through there what is essentially the wall of systems which. I mean, NATO is not even in the same league technologically. And this is just one factor, apart from the fact Russians have the most trained and most combat-ready Air Force in the world.
Right, yeah. And that's, we'll have to leave it there because I know you've got another appearance you got to make somewhere else. But we'll pick this up and continue on because I think it's a very fascinating conversation that could be really illuminating that a lot of people don't understand. And also, just to remind people, go to Smoothie X12 if you need to get more of Andrei Martyanov. If you can't get enough from him this week, he's always got some great stuff. And we will look forward to seeing you on the very next episode of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.